Welcome to another Quantum Conversation, brought to you by acoustichealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and I invite you to sit back as we enter the quantum realm, that space of the greater part of you. It is your connection to infinite possibilities, infinite potential, and infinite mastery. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are excited to be back with Erik Roth, the astrologer who actually is here to talk all about us in the stars, our personal stars. Welcome, everybody. We are live on this Zoom live stream on YouTube, and we welcome everyone for being here. There's something about it where it's just live and you have to be here and there's no hiding. So there's something pretty real about that. So with that, we'd love to have you share with us. If you've got questions for Erik Roth, he's here to answer them. But first, I want to welcome you. Hi, Erik. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you, Loren. It's really good to be back. I really love doing these with you, and so I'm excited about today's show.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. We're feeling this year. I mean, this has been a year of incredible growth. And I'm sure you've got something to say about that, Erik, but we're seeing a lot of change. Numerically, it's a 5-year. And if we each look back at the change that we've made, we can see that, wow, if we stay in the heart and go with the flow, things happen very quickly. So I want your take on the current shifts this year and astrologically what you see, and even in your own life, for the collective and your own life.
Yeah, thank you. A great question. So basically, and 2021 is definitely a transition year. This is tailing off of what we all experienced in 2020, being this just incredible start of the death rebirth process, at least certainly here in the United States, but around the world for sure. And now we're in this time where there is still, I mean, we're only roughly 7 months into this year, and I do believe there's still more big changes on the horizon for us for the rest of this year and into 2022. And that's certainly captured by a particular alignment that I've talked about. I think it was a prior show back in, I think it was in the winter time with you about Saturn and Uranus. And so being prepared for things that are, that are unexpected, that are novel, that help us break through into new territory, new dynamics about ourselves. And really all of last year and into early this year, it's giving us just a wonderful opportunity to really look deep in ourselves and see ourselves in a way that we haven't before. Situation on that most of us have never experienced, with the result of a pandemic and the chaos that was created politically, economically, and socially out there, and especially and of course, not to mention, of course, the mention of health, the health issues that have cropped up and the focus on that. So we're here now to perhaps have some, continued breakthroughs with who we are, what we're about, and where we really want to drive our journey. What turns do we want to make? This is the time to actually get into focus, into motion with that, and be flexible, but not what I would call attached to certain expectations, but having certain goals to have in mind, but those goals that could be perhaps flexible and fluid, and where you're able to adjust and adapt to it rather than hard pressed into a particular goal and not bending at all. And certainly this year is a lot about that. We had a large expectation, like, okay, well, the vaccines are here, everything's going to be better, and there's the political chaos is going to die down. but there's all the debris, all the aftermath of what happened in 2020. And there's still a lot to pick up from that. And we can see that in the reason why there's, at least here, well, and around the world, there's surges in COVID cases, still political battles being waged. And, still, we're still in a fragile state of ourselves, of what kind of community we want, what kind of nation or country or uh, being that we want to become. All of that is in a vulnerable space, and so it's up to us to decide what we want to bring forth in our lives.
So there we go. Get busy dreaming new earth, dreaming solutions. I actually heard recently it's time to stop dreaming and start acting and start doing. And this is what it really feels like. The inspiration that comes forward from the changes that are upon us, the opportunities that are upon us, can really be accelerated when we focus on them. That's the importance of really moving through this, like you said, getting into focus. I saw a calendar for 2022 and it had the beautiful 2022 on it, and just the energy of that felt wonderful. It is powerful when you see the gateways in this next year, but we don't have to wait until next year. This is all happening right here, right now. So, for people making their plan and moving forward with new Earth ideas, do you see astrologically this time supports it in even a deeper way?
Yes, yes, I do. And not just the Saturn Uranus square that has been a big theme of 2021. And as a side note, that theme continues in part into 2022. There are other things going on this year that are really helping us, create the changes that we want. Recently, we experienced a powerful Venus Mars conjunction in Leo back on July 13th. And on the 12th, the moon joined them. What's fascinating about that transition is Mars is representing in my or the school of astrology that I come from in shamanic astrology. Mars is in a particular place in its cycle where it's descending, it's actually fading. So the masculine energy is going through, is surrendering to its own quote death and rebirth. This is the time that it's doing it. And for the feminine, Venus, at least the feminine principle that Venus represents, this emerging goddess, her light is shining even brighter and will continue to get brighter and brighter all the way until about early December. So this is, I think, a testimony of part of the transformation and also the fears of some that are holding on to an old image of a romantic image of maybe what the masculine represented at one time. But that no longer really applies. And that's what can create certain idealisms and battles that can be waged. But in a more, in its essence, between Mars and Venus, it's the exchange of co-creative, willful energy together that is an exchange of intuitive interaction, relationship between each other. That is an understanding of the direction each one is going and having to what one is surrendering to in order to transform. The other one is rising to create more of this new power for itself. That the sovereignty, this voice that it wants to speak from. So that's part of the theme in 2021 as well. The other factors is I mentioned Saturn and Uranus, but recently, actually, this is the last year that this is taking place. Is Pluto and the other dwarf planet Eris, Eris. They are in a place where they're having two more squares with each other. So for those that are not familiar with squares, I mean, it might be a good time to just mention that if anyone's ever seen a first quarter moon or a last quarter moon, that's essentially a square. That means the sun is on one horizon while the moon is between the two horizons. It's about a 90-degree square. So that's essentially the relationship there. And it can create tension. It can create a point of stress and pressure in order for change to occur, an intersection of sorts. So the purpose of it is for change to occur, and not just to put pressure, to put stress on it just for stress, but actually to do something hopefully beneficial for each individual and for humanity. But going back to Pluto and Eris, these are Pluto represents uh, one of the two planetary bodies that represent what we call the underworld, the realm where we transform, go through death and rebirth, face our fears, and surrender to our feelings, surrender to who we are, our truth. Eris represents kind of a combination of worlds, but it's more about the sovereignty and will and intelligence of the feminine energy. She's also a disruptor, which helps us see our own truth through events beyond our control, usually through interaction with others. So it gets us to face our ego. So there is some correspondence between Pluto and Eris. And so being in a square, which can create a lot of intensity. So as America is going through a death and rebirth in particular, there is an additional layer of intensity that is taking place. Again, I feel the object of this is for us to create something more sustainable for humanity, for the nation, for people, um, and to not to ignore what is around us, but to get us to face that in whatever form that might be, that might show up as. So there's a great benefit here if we can only open our eyes to see it as a collective, rather than trying to ignore or follow some, um, you know, somebody's version of what might be the truth, but actually going into a deeper level and going, wait, I mean, I watched a few moments of the hearing that's going on Capitol Hill right now, and there was a lot of heart, a lot of compassion, a lot of sincerity that was shared, and that's the kind of thing. It's them coming to themselves and actually sharing their experiences from their heart, from what all their senses engaged upon. And it was great to see that, to experience that. And this is what each of us can do for ourselves. And a lot of us are confused or afraid, but there's no danger in approaching those areas because it can free us to be more who we are. It could liberate us, and we can actually get our power back when we do that. We empower ourselves and be able to contribute to our communities, our families, our society.
Yes, being able to contribute to our communities and societies. As you were speaking there, this is the importance of going within to our higher self, connecting within, and feeling what's going on. And um, one of the things that struck me as you were speaking is there's a new word that's out, and it is hopeful because it is regenerative business. Regenerative business, where it's going to be a no brainer for people to um, hold maybe corporations responsible for the amount of plastic that they put out, for example. Things must be regenerative. That's a new buzzword, and I love that. And when we see, you were saying something about, can we all look out and see the change and see the opportunity? It almost appears right now with the fires. I asked you before we started how you were doing because you're in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And we have so many fires. There's many fires. There is smoke in my state, we've been in smoke since the middle of June. And I just wonder, is this going to be what it is? Well, I think that this is actually an eye opener for many. Not only is it here, I'm in Colorado, not only is it here, but this smoke is reaching the East Coast, New York. So that to me shows their eyes are opening to this, right? So that's a good sign. Then by going within and connecting to our higher self, getting the directives on how we can contribute. That's really what we're seeing, and it's beautiful.
I love that regenerative business. That is absolutely a big thing. That's actually I've noticed this with. I read up to certain updates online about what certain corporations are doing, bigger ones in particular, that are actually taking steps, or at least moving in the direction of trying to create a more sustainable practice. At least that's I see that as an intent, and I think that's going to become more and more evident as people look to these companies and going, "Hey, if you're not doing that, then I don't want to support you if you're not doing that." And it's really vital because I was, in fact, just today, I saw on NPR um, an article that had to do with climate change, and in the Bay Area of California, the two of the biggest corporations in the world, Facebook and Google, are headquartered there. And where their businesses, where their headquarters are, lie right on the San Francisco Bay Area, right at the right at the edge of the near some levees, and is predicted due to climate change that these sea levels will rise very significantly, and over the next 20 to 30 years, that Facebook and Google would be underwater, literally underwater. And so they were talking about, hey, if you're needing to help us, then put some money where you might promote, but put some money where your mouth is, and like show up in that way. And hey, help out the cities to plan for to protect communities, not just your business, but to protect other communities. You because of the amount of hundreds of billions of dollars that you pull in. So it was a fascinating article, and it brings to attention that these corporations are seeing it right in their face. That I think they're beginning to be given no choice but to try to do something about this. Um, this is a really critical time, and if we want future generations to thrive on this planet, you know, we've got to really show up and speak about this and call it out. And I love that again the regenerative business model, and I think a lot of people are that's I think it's going to be something that isn't going to just go away. When we're seeing these fires, last year in Oregon was horrible as well, and we had the big fire that is now starting to be controlled in Eastern Oregon. That is the was the largest wildfire in Oregon history out there. Fortunately, not many people live in that area, so it wasn't as dangerous. But um, when the smoke spreads across the country, even from just that one fire, something has shifted on this planet, and it's our relationship, how we not just manage the forest, but our relationship, how we treat it, how we treat ourselves in relationship to the land and the sky and the air, literally the air we breathe. I mean, what an amazing theme it was last year. COVID attacking the lungs. We had the George Floyd murder and the social unrest and the I can't breathe, and then the fires and the smoke all coming around. And for there was a period of a couple of weeks here in Southern Oregon where it was hazardous to just walk outside your door because of the smoke at levels that were unprecedented in the history of Oregon. And so in all the major cities, especially along the western side of Oregon, but us to some degree in the east as well. So the breath, our breath, a breath of creation. Do we want what kind of a planet do we want to live on here? You know, I yeah. and corporations are made up of people. They're made up of people from all walks of life, and if we all do our part in that, then it could really, literally create change on this planet that hasn't that couldn't for some reason couldn't be done decades ago, but now um, we're in a stark reality now where we can create change and have a more peaceful environment, have a better relationship with Earth, and creating a brand new Earth for ourselves as one of the um, things that are going on in especially spiritual communities. So it's just amazing. I both excited and anxious at the same time of where I'm living and the time in which I'm living in. But I believe in a lot of the people that can co-create with me and others to for a better future for ourselves. I do believe in that, and I think it's absolutely possible.
And this is why we are all here to assist others in holding their vision of New Earth and seeing the incredible opportunity that is around us for new systems to come up. And there's lots of groups that gather to help cultivate these ideas and move them forward. And it's really exciting. So we keep our focus on that. It's opportunities. So beautiful. Another way that we can know ourselves so deeply is with our personal stars.
Yes.
Let's talk about this because you've got some findings that is important for each of us because it can help us with our journey. What is it about knowing our personal star? Like, for example, there's the Vedic tradition and they've
Hmm.
got the stars. Is this what you're referring to as well, or is it something different?
It's well, there we're both systems reference the same, similar stars or some of the same stars, but it's a different way of using astrology. In shamanic astrology, it honors the experience of our relationship with the individual stars and the constellations. And so, in that way, there is a connection to the Vedic astrology in that sense. Uses a different system of interpreting signs. It's more of a sidereal zodiac as opposed to what I use as a seasonal or tropical zodiac. But each of those systems are there to help a person understand themselves in some fashion, to navigate their future as well. So what I mean by personal stars, it's even if a person doesn't know their birth time, you can still get a lot out of knowing some important personal stars. So, for example, we just had a full moon. This is I think, a amazing example. I posted something on Facebook about this and Instagram about Jupiter and the moon. Jupiter was conjunct the full moon in um, just well, the moon was in actually no wait, it's in August. This happens around the same date, the 22nd as opposed to the 23rd. So in August um, of 2021, August 22nd / 23rd, Jupiter and the full moon come together. Now Jupiter is just inside this. Sorry. Oh, I'm confusing the two full moons because I did a video about the August full moon and I did a post for the July full moon. Okay, let me get clear on this. The July full moon involved Jupiter. Jupiter was just in the very early degrees of Pisces, just barely. And the full moon was there just inside, going into Aquarius there. So we have our first Aquarius, first of two Aquarius full moons. But near where the full moon happened to be, just to below that, is this experience of the star Fomalhaut when the early degrees, Jupiter in the early degrees of Pisces, Fomalhaut in the early degrees of Pisces. This is a star that sits about 4 degrees Pisces. So for those people that have some early, whatchamacallit, early, uh, say planets or personal points in the early degrees of Pisces, they would have a connection to this personal star called Fomalhaut. And in that star is one of the more well known, at least in circles that study the mysticism and the alchemy of stars, the magic of stars. Fomalhaut is one of the 4 guardians or watchers of the sky and of the earth. It's a star that is connected to the mysticism, the magic, and the sort of this a heart-opening creation. It sits in on the mouth of the southern fish constellation, and above it is the constellation of the water bear, what astronomers call Aquarius still. So difference between signs and constellations there. So it's not that it's the constellation of Aquarius, but that Aquarius, that constellation sits in the sign, mostly in the sign of Pisces, partly still in Aquarius. So the moon and Jupiter sitting there, and then below it is Fomalhaut. And in that constellation, the cosmic waters are dripping down of wisdom and knowledge into the mouth of the fish. And the fish is opening up and receiving all of that cosmic knowledge and that wisdom of the starry skies of the cosmic waters. And it connects us to the celestial realm. It opens up the pathways. This is an example of my own chart, actually. My own natal moon position is the moon was in that space, that area where Fomalhaut was. And so I have this personal connection to it. It was a star I've gravitated to myself personally. But there are many other stars one could connect with. But this is a star a person can go out and look at and have a personal connection with it. Say, oh, I really want to, let's say their Jupiter position or their rising sign is connected to that star. Then it can be part of their emerging identity. It can be part of their future, their vision quest path. And they can meditate on the wisdom that comes from that particular star. And for Fomalhaut, it's this wisdom of being able to, the wisdom of the heart, the wisdom of the astral celestial plane, and tuning into that energy and opening up to a greater level of self and understanding of that. So Fomalhaut can bring out those qualities in a person. Fomalhaut is, like many stars, they have sometimes different spellings of the names or different pronunciations. So when I'm saying this, if a person's trying to spell it or pronounce it right, it's okay that if they pronounce it differently, because we're taking this language that comes from thousands of years ago and trying to repronounce it in today's, English language or other languages. And it could be sometimes a little tenuous as to what's the correct way of spelling. Because I just had a conversation with Kaylin Castell actually before this call, and she calls it Fomalhaut. And so that's just another way of pronouncing it. So that's an example of connecting into the star, of a personal star. Other powerful stars, especially the brighter ones, the ones you can really see more readily. There are many dozens of those across the sky, and if you expand that out, it could be more like hundreds, depending on one's, what is a bright star and what is not a bright star. So I want to share with this, and this is going to be a little bit preview, is that Kayla and I are teaming up to do a whole series, a webinar series about the magic of a particular set of stars called the Bohemian stars, which are 15 special magical stars of alchemy, and that astrologers and alchemists and others have used throughout history to create all kinds of things, whether it be protection, whether it be setting an intention for their future, or wanting to manifest something in their lives, or it could be related to relationships. It could be related to all kinds of things. They worked and created talismans. They associated stones and things with it. These, in fact, you can use that with your personal stars. You can actually create that. And for those people wanting more information just on that particular thing, that mystaralchemy.com, my star and then the word alchemy.com. We just launched this website today and getting things rolling. But this star series that we're doing together, we'll be doing others, and talking about this and bringing it out and sharing even some free information around this too in the future, because it's so important to share. It's definitely been a powerful fascination for me, and it's helped me glimpse a deeper part and a richer part of my own chart, as well as others. When I do readings, personal readings for people, sometimes if I see a point like their ascendant or maybe their moon or their sun, if I see it like on a particular powerful star, then I would talk about it. It could be Antares, or it could be Regulus or Spica. It could be Aldebaran or Betelgeuse, for example. These are stars that are either near the ecliptic or on the ecliptic, where the passage of the sun is. And it could be a star that they can more fully connect with in their own lives. And so I try to leave them with that for them to connect into that star and say, oh, well, this is something you could do on your own, that you don't need certainly I can provide some information, but you yourself can go out and connect with it yourself and meditate with it and know what time of year it's going to appear in the sky more readily, whether it be in the evening or the morning time. And this year, well, really every year around this time, the brightest, after the sun, the brightest star in the sky is going to be rising in the early morning sky, what is called a heliacal rise, called Sirius. And most people have heard of this star because it is the brightest one in the sky, no matter what hemisphere you're living in. And a lot of the mythology around this star comes from ancient Egypt and Northern Africa in particular, but also part of the Mediterranean and Mesopotamia areas. Mythologies and stories around the phoenix, around Isis and the goddess Sopdet, and even Osiris have been related to this. And even their own the seasonal flooding of the Nile. They even built a calendar around this star called Sirius. And it's in the constellation of Canis Major, which is why it's called the dog star. And the dog days of summer, this is all due to this star. And, at different times in history, the farther you go back, the more it was, rose at a different time of year, especially if you go back many thousands of years. But this is the time, like in early August, if you're living like in the southern part of the US or into Mexico, you're going to be able to see Sirius rising in the early morning before sunrise in the first week of August. And then where you are, I think in Colorado, Loren, I believe it's around maybe somewhere between the 8th and 12th of August. And that's close to where I am latitude wise. So for me, it's about as early as August 11th, but most likely more, depending on your horizon line, may not be until like the 13th or 14th. So the farther north you go up, the later it comes up, but eventually everyone will be able to see Sirius again, unless you're like, I think in the polar regions. I don't know if you can see it if you're way up near the Arctic Circle. I haven't looked that far up in that way, but this is a powerful star, and at this time of year, it's a symbol of this upcoming. There's an upcoming holiday, Celtic Gaelic holiday called Lughnasadh, and I think that it was later recognized as Lammas, which is August 1st, and it's between the solstice, the June solstice, and the September equinox. And it just so happens on this day that there's a Saturn Sun opposition, which is really big, and the very earliest beginning that a person may be able to see Sirius in the early morning sky. So there's a confluence of these archetypal, not archetypal, astrological events taking place together. And it's a celebration of the earliest of the harvest time. And what better way when you've got this powerful, vibrant, multicolored star that actually, and I've seen images of this, of a person used it was probably a special camera, but they took a bunch of pictures of Sirius. And I think there was like a dozen of them they showed, and each one was of a different color of the star Sirius. As it filters through our atmosphere, it shows all these different wavelengths, this rainbow of energy coming through to us. So Sirius has this powerful way of interacting with us that helps us, you might say, connect and rebirth like the phoenix and rise again from what we once were. And again, Sirius being the star that is brightest after the sun. So this is a star that sits at about roughly about 13 or 14 degrees Cancer. And so for people that have any personal points or planets around Cancer, or even the opposite part of the sky, Capricorn, you have some personal connection to that star. And that star involves itself in your life, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. It's there. So really can help a person grow into their own space, more fully. Like, hey, let's say your birth time, and your ascendant might fall into that within 6 degrees, because that's usually the rule of thumb in astrology circles. When a star comes within 6 degrees of a personal point, like a moon or a rising sign or the sun, then that star can become your personal star, and you can connect further and deeper into that. So it can make it more individual than just saying, oh, well, I was born with like in my case, I was born with a Capricorn rising, a Sagittarius sun, and a Pisces moon. But then you go further into it and look at the star positions and go, oh, well, you have this star and this star that are really prominently in your life because the sun and the moon and the rising sign are at these degrees. So it really like further defines you, makes you even more unique, even more complex as a human being. So the stars really provide that additional layer of expression, archetypal expression for yourself, for a person, that they can really ultimately relate to or learn about in themselves. Maybe they haven't encountered it, and there's a piece of them that they haven't really uncovered, that they get a chance to uncover for themselves by forming a relationship with that star.
All right, beautiful. So you do readings, of course, for clients all around the world, and you can help people discover what their personal star is and understand the influencing stars as well. When you work with clients and you see their realization of these stars, are there any stories that stick out to you as um, like examples of how someone's awareness of a star actually helped them in their personal life or business or any of that?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. Um, I would say yes. I mean, there's an example where um, I was helping a person connect with the star Antares in their life. It sits at about, in fact, I think they had a Sagittarius rising, and it was right in that neighborhood of where the star Antares was. And Antares can help a person um, connect into the deeper riches of their being in order to, especially for healing. When it comes to healing, when it comes to detoxification, a person can utilize that in themselves to help clear out and clean out things that no longer belong, that are toxic, thereby getting them clarity and helpful energy and being able to focus in on what they really truly want to be, and which can include business or like purpose. And that's that area of Sagittarius, roughly 10 degrees Sagittarius, and then 6 degrees on either side of that. It sits at the heart of the Scorpion, and the Scorpion is the guardian of uh, the galactic center. So it's also a star that it offers protection too. And in certain uh, certain astrology books that talk about this personal stars, they sometimes use a like an invocation, and part of that invocation is about protection from, say, what they might term as evil, or things that are unhealthy, and offered as a protective shield. So Antares can be a star that can help you protect yourself, or maybe even others around you that are close to you, perhaps. And so I've shared this information with like that recent example of that person who had Sagittarius rising, that can really help them become more of who they are.
Okay, good. Thank you. This is more of the importance of really understanding your own personal chart so we can navigate our way and see what's coming down the pike. And it actually prepares us in a way, in a sense. We may not always understand it, but it's very interesting. So, other stars this summer, is there, what else is going on the rest of this summer and the rest of this year? We've got that Sirius gateway of the Lion's Gate 8-8. Anything around that that you wish to share?
Well, that's where the new moon takes place. There's a new moon, and the sun is just at the edge. The sun and moon will be just at the edge of the actual constellation of the Lion, but in the Leo sign. So it's interesting that it's happening on that day. And I have a little thing I want to refer to for myself here about that. Where is that? Yeah, there we are. Um, so around that time, this is just at the edge after it passes the Crab constellation and gets right near. I think there's another star called Alturp. It's like at the mouth of the Lion. Kaylin talks about that sometimes, and it's at that space.
Do you want to
Well,
share your screen?
I could, sure.
Oh, good. Let me do something real quick to allow you to do that. Okay. Because that would be cool. We'd love to see. And you know what?
Yeah.
This is another good time to mention the apps on our phone. There's beautiful apps on our phone. Star Walk is my favorite. If you see a star in the sky, pull out your app and you'll figure out what it is. Okay, here, this is beautiful.
Yeah, Star Walk. There's several apps, but Star Walk's one of the good ones out there for sure. Yeah, so here's August 8th, and there's Mercury. Mercury's nearby. It's Regulus is not far. I mean, it's kind of within the range, not within the 6 degree range, but it's nearby. So this is actually as you can see, here's Sirius. Not quite risen yet, but because the sun's in the sky, so you wouldn't be able to see Sirius at that point. But that's where that star is, and you can see at this point where this location is in the sky, and Mercury. And what do I have this at? 16 degrees Leo. That's the new moon coming up August 8th. So yeah, this is I've got a Sabian symbol here about this. This is it's an interesting Sabian symbol. We use here 17 Leo for the Sabian Oracle, Linda Hill's Sabian Oracle, and it's basically about not having a plan and going into it with a pure sense, intuitive sense of creativeness. Rather, let's say you're approaching a painting, or you want to sculpt something, or maybe you're planting some plants in your garden, and you don't really know what you want to create ultimately, and so you just trust your intuition as you go about it. There's no major like instruction manual, but you go into it in a big way, and then something's created from it. There maybe you have some friends that help. There's a community of people coming together, and they're creating something together, and suddenly you have this vibrant creation, a garden, a painting, a sculpture, another piece of art, perhaps, that shows up. And this is what that new moon is about.
Mm.
And it is I would look at it, this certainly this new moon could be a portal into creativity, a portal into co-creativeness of something that hasn't yet been created. And you're tuning into the solar energy, the cosmic energy, as you're reaching into that creative space for yourself. So it's actually near the point, which is interesting. This new moon is very near the point that happened in July, where the Venus and Mars conjunction took place. So that's absolutely powerful, and it's tapping into that sort of that imprint that Venus and Mars left at that time when the moon passed by there as well back in July 12th and 13th. I saw I think 2 of the 3 days I was out there looking at it. I think there was a day in there where it was cloudy and I wasn't able to see it, but it's really impressive, especially Venus's light and with the moon coming through. And the Venus and Mars were so close that their lights, but to the naked eye, they looked like they were merged together. So this new moon is bringing that back out, allowing that to plant the seeds for an entirely new creation to come through. So this 8/8 that every year that I hear about and connect into, this is an unusual, like, it doesn't happen that often where you get a new moon on that date.
Ah, really a time for expanding.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I wanted to just clarify something because do I have it here? I don't. I think it's when let's just make sure. Okay. Yes. All right. So
Ah,
here's the July 25th. So it was just past the full moon. There's Jupiter and the moon, and then there's Fomalhaut. So give people a better understanding of that. And Jupiter was really bright and still will be bright for the next few months. And then the August full moon, I want to give people another visual image here. Let's see. Here we go. There's the August full moon. So it's very similar. The two moons are very similar. It's just that the July one was just after the full moon. So it looked almost full. It looked pretty darn full. And then, but the star Fomalhaut is wrapped around both of those connections there. So I kind of wanted to give people a deeper understanding of what it looks like out there in the sky. Um, but yeah, I'm glad you asked about that 8/8. So thank you for that.
yes, we have reports from light workers every year that starting with the 8/8, that just really feels expansive for many folks. And then by the time we get to, well, then we, of course, this is setting up the equinox, right? The equinox. But when we get to the 11:11 gateway, that's another acceleration. Um, just it's very interesting. People feeling dizziness or just having new downloads come in, or things, new creative input. It's really quite fascinating every year, this cycle.
Yeah, and this comes after the time. So this is just around in those first couple of weeks where Sirius is rising, and you have the just past the celebration of the midsummer harvest celebration, August 1st. It really captures that, okay, we're past the time of maximum light,
Yes.
and there's a relationship with more of a different level of creativeness that's coming through, of reaping the bounties of some of what has already been created, but also then seeding the next wave of it. And so this is a way for us to really connect into that for ourselves. So for those of you curious, like I have a whole YouTube video that I've done just on like the August alignments, not all just the major highlights of that. And I didn't talk specifically about the Lionsgate due to time, but I didn't want to make the video too long, but just to know for your audience here that, this new moon definitely, 8-8 is definitely a very special number. The number 8 itself is, if you turn it sideways, it's the symbol of infinity. And, the circle that never ends, it's life, the cycles, the pattern that just keeps going. And, it's up to us to put whatever we want into that space for ourselves. So it's very magical. Absolutely.
Oh, beautiful. Well, we're coming up on that. So dream big, everyone, and take some action. Write notes down of the action that you can take and move
Hmm.
this forward. All right. So then the rest of the year, is there anything else you'd like to share? Anything on your radar?
Yeah. The so there's one more this year, one more Saturn Uranus conjunction. Sorry, not conjunction, square in the sky, and that happens in December. Um, Jupiter and Saturn go, station direct in October. I think Pluto in September. And we're in a period now where there's a lot of retrograde planets. In fact, in August, Uranus finally joins the rest of the group of all the outer planets going retrograde. So only the inner planets, Mars, Venus, and Mercury, are currently not retrograde. So once we get to August, I think it's 19th, I've got that. Yep, August 19th. So yeah, I've had sharings from other astrologers and other people about what that means. Like when you get a lot of planets going retrograde at the same time. This happened last year. We're kind of in this cycle of multiple years where a whole bunch of planets are going retrograde at the same time. And in September, Mercury will also be retrograde. So you'll have Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mercury. So 7 planets all retrograde. Only Venus and Mars won't be.
Wow.
So you're getting this really powerful episode of like, okay, we're going backward. And what does that mean? Well, we're reviewing all that we are. And in the creative space that is, maybe we can go back and connect with things that might help us create our future, things that can support what we want for our future, but also going back to deal with what we've already may not have fully dealt with, allowing us to see it in hindsight, to review that. I think it's an interesting time for there to be like a committee to, like on Congress, for example, to review a major event, a terrible event that happened in January as an example of that. Like, okay, this is a great time to review that because the planets, if you will, are helping foster this, helping bring this out more. And hopefully in a responsible way, hopefully in a way that helps create breakthroughs and death rebirth and all of that that benefits all of us. But in our personal lives, what can we do to review into that space for ourselves and open up, maybe new territory, maybe something we want a new project or maybe a new relationship we want to forge. Well, this could be a way to like clear out what we need to clear out in order to make room for that space. so we can bring that into our lives and walk with a certain amount of grace and beauty as we do that. And at the end of the year, as I mentioned, the next Saturn Uranus square happening at the same time or around the same time as there's a Pluto Venus conjunction where Venus is retrograde, which is highly unusual. And I I think December is definitely going to be a very active month, at least of what could result from what takes place in December, just as like what resulted last year when we had the Saturn Jupiter conjunction towards the end of the year on the solstice. We had a really powerful effect after that. And I do believe something important is going to occur from these alignments that will help us see an even greater truth in all of ourselves. And because the feminine is going to be playing a stronger role this year and all of that, there could be perhaps greater balance in that space. At least I see that as an intent there for all of us. And I'd like to, when we get closer to the end of the year, Lauren, definitely do a review of 2021 and looking ahead to 2022. I'm going to be doing an astrology panel in September at the Conscious Life Expo, and I'll be talking about some of these things, but kind of giving a little snapshot preview of what 2022 is all about as well. I do believe that's continuing on this multi-year process of transformation in humanity, and it's all in how we choose, how we can utilize our free will and respond to what we want to create. Where Jupiter has been hanging around, for example, it stationed earlier this year, stationed retrograde near the star Fomalhaut, and then it's retrograding back, and then next year, I think it's late January, early February, that it goes over Fomalhaut once again in Pisces, and that's a star that's going to factor in again later down the road in a few years when Saturn crosses over that area. So I see this star as playing a powerful role in humanity's future. Yeah, not the only one, but one of the several important markers for us all. But if we go back to just this year, this retrograde period, it's going to be interesting because last year what we saw, especially in the summertime and into the very early days of the fall, was it was a firestorm. There was social unrest. There was a lot of challenges, but we also saw some humility. We saw some compassion. We saw something come to the surface and some breakthroughs as we went through that process. And we woke up. A lot of us really, really woke up. And maybe this is that next stage of waking up that this year can help us wake up even more farther than we have before. So I don't think that we're going to have the same exact copy of the summer of 2020. Based on what I've seen so far, it doesn't feel like it. I do feel we're still, though, in a fragile state with the environment, and that will still have some major fires. But our response to it now has shifted. And I just read in California, for example, that their major utility company there is beginning a process of burying at least the project of starting at least 10% of their power lines are going to be buried in the soil to help prevent wildfires. And so things like that, even though it's costing a lot of money and it's not about the profit, it's about actually people's safety. It's about hey, we want to plant this for the future and protect people's lives. That is, one could say that this is connected to that that saying that you brought up earlier about business. For whatever reason, the R word has left my brain.
Regenerative, yes.
Regenerative, thank you. Regenerative business, where it helps protect the forests
Yeah.
and helps protect communities. And like, okay, we know that this company, a PG&E should have done it, decades ago. But hey, if you're starting it, then all the more power to you. Please do and do more. And there's been conversations about that here in Oregon, although I don't know how far that's going to get started, because a lot of the fires that happened in September of 2020, when the real big firestorm took place, was either because of arson or because of power lines being blown down and starting fires. So, we could actually eliminate some of the dangers if we, act upon, just that's being more like, hey, this is an innovation we can actually do. This is like seeing into the future. It doesn't matter whether it fattens your bottom line or not, or profits, your CEOs are in a big profit. It doesn't matter. This is about protecting and connecting to the people and the health of the earth. So anyway, that's just as an example of maybe some of the other things that might show up as breakthroughs. It's interesting. There was conversations about the billionaires going to space and how they could have used the money to do something else. Well, I look at it that they should be able to do both. Regenerative business model like Amazon and Google and Tesla and SpaceX and Microsoft and Facebook and these and of course the oil companies. These companies can really show up and hey, donate money to companies, to organizations that actually have the tools and the resources to actually do this work, where it's for communities rather than just making the bottom line for your shareholders. And as one last example, I know we're probably running a little bit over here, but ExxonMobil had a recent election of their board of directors, I believe it was, and they had 3 or 4 new members elected that were pro-environmental in their board of directors. And they called it a coup, because never before has so much gone into that space. And now they have people that care about the earth really have more of a voice in this particular company, ExxonMobil, which has definitely been a huge polluter on this planet. So you have something that, hey, there is a behind the scenes. There's revolutions going on that maybe end up becoming really beneficial to all of us.
Yes. Well, I wanted to just say here, I'll take the screen. We can stop that
Oh
share.
yeah,
I wanted to just say as well that um, when I believe it was Richard Branson, when he went out into space and he saw the curvature of the Earth, he now is doing all he can to help the Earth. That right there is really good, right? Yes, it's what happens when you see our world from that perspective. You can't help but love it. And that's why we're all here. So I honor you for helping people understand their own map of the stars within themselves and how they're influenced by the stars. And we honor everyone for their own inner journey in understanding who they are and tapping into this guidance and into your own astrological chart to learn more and really bring forward your gifts and talents, because we all know that we came here with that purpose, even if it's just to be the love and light that we are. So, thank you so much for this, Erik. You have special sessions, personal sessions with people. So, if
yes.
they want to do their stars or whatever, this is more like different features. Tell us about your special personal sessions.
Yeah, so I have packages as well as individual, just one-off sessions of different lengths. So I have a 90-minute session that is generally for first-time uh, readings for people who've never had a reading with me or desire just a longer reading. Um, I do a personal session where I review their chart. I look at the timings in their life and help them connect personally to the expression of their chart, which is a reflection of themselves. There's, that goes beyond just the sun sign, but maybe what phase in life they're in. And then I do a shorter version of that, like in a compressed hour. Or if somebody just wants to get a taste in a half an hour version, 30-minute session. Then I have packages of, I think we've got one that's 3 sessions, and I think we have even one that's, is it 5 listed there? I think well they'll list it on your website. But depends on how far someone wants to go. And if you get a major package, I'd recommend spacing that out, not just one after another, like 1 week after another, but spacing out over a period of a few months or maybe even a year. So it gives people a chance to integrate what I've shared with them, and just to be able to go connect and listen to the recording and then come back, and maybe there are things that help prompt, activate in them, that they can come back to me and go, hey, Erik, can we put some focus or attention on this area of my life? And then we can go back into that space too. And with the longer sessions, and if you get packages, that's an area where I have more room to play around with when it comes to talking about personal stars and how they interact with our chart, with ourselves, with our lives, and our own shamanic path.
Yes, okay, great. So there's several options here, and yeah, that one of 3
Hmm.
full shamanic astrology readings, and those are 90 minutes each. This is really good. I mean, the bundles that you've got, they're all great because someone can come back and the next time, with the first time they hear you speak talking about their chart, they may not get it. Months go by, they come back and they might have a question, and that's even more guidance. So that's really what we recommend too, is for people to allow themselves the space in between to digest the information, to even go learn more about it, and to
Hmm.
witness their own lives so that they make the most of those sessions with you by really asking questions. Really good. Thank you. This is all available on the special offer button right on the webpage here at Acoustic Health. And I do have to say, you guys, really very affordable. You've got a reading here, your quick 30-minute for $50. That's really great. So if you're into
Yes.
this, it's great. Go for it. Get a session with Erik, and you can get signed up and actually get in right away with Erik. He's available.
Yeah, and I would just share also, in September and or October, I'm actually planning on raising my rates, but the rates that I have with you currently are going to stay in force for a little bit longer. So that'll be a greater incentive to want to, you know, uh,
Get the package.
decide to get a reading with me through quantum conversations here.
And get those bundles. Again, those are really good and awesome. You'll see that as you raise your rates, there'll be more. You'll probably be even busier because that's just how that happens. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm going to on my own website. I'm going to be actually changing some of the features, expanding upon it and adding 2 things. And so, yeah, there'll be some as we get later in the year. I'll share more with you, ORN, as we go further down that road.
Okay, awesome. Well, until then, if you'd like to give yourself a treat and some inner guidance, get yourself a session with Erik Roth. Erik, I want to thank you again for this conversation and for sharing your wisdom and your insight. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for holding your new earth vision and
Mm,
listening to the call of your heart and taking action steps. Thank you. Thanks, Erik.
thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Now it is time to dance our way to the cosmic heart, and we're just going to have just a little bit of fun. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this quantum conversation, and thank you for dancing with us to the cosmic heart. As we raise our own vibration, we raise the vibration of the planet. This show is dedicated to you and all awakening hearts, as we are here to shine our bright light and amplify our love. Access all quantum conversations, special offers from our guests, and online healing retreats by visiting acoustichealth.com. I'm Loren Gailey, and from my sacred heart to yours, I honor your magnificent love and light. We leave you now with music from the universe. Music literally created by the universe, as musical notes were assigned to mathematical equations. The result is this beautiful music, available at acoustichealth.com. Namaste.